This is a recording for our subscribers, a special report. Some of you might be aware that this past summer I became very ill, very suddenly, and it was very mysterious because I actually have really good health habits and I'm essentially a very healthy person. However, I discovered something that you're probably never going to see in the news media, or if you do, you're going to see it in a very sensationalized way, and it turns out to be the root of many, many illnesses like cancer, like heart disease, like diabetes, like you name it. This is a contributing factor to all of those diseases, and you'll never hear about it. So let me explain to you, so that if you are hit by a mysterious ailment or a so-called common ailment, and you're not happy with the half-assed medical treatment you get, and if you are happy, you have very low standards, I'll tell you that. I never thought the medical system worked very well, but until I got really sick, I had no idea how profoundly dysfunctional and corrupt it is. It's off the hook. I won't bore you with the stories, but it's as bad as anything I've ever seen in my life. If you think the U.S. has the best healthcare system in the world, well, first of all, statistically, we don't. We're way down the list now of countries. We're not even in the top 30 anymore. But we do pay twice as much as anybody else in the next most expensive country. So it's not a good system. The people in it have abdicated their responsibility. They're in it for the paycheck. Very few of them have backbones. Even less of them are able to think independently. And none of them seem to want to do any kind of study at all. I mean, once they get their degree and their little money license, they're finished. You know, if they got to go and do additional study, so-called study to get, recertified, they'll do it. And whatever they're told, they're just going to swallow it whole. And when the drug dealer, big pharma representative comes around and tells them to give you this drug for this ailment, they just do it. They're not going to think twice. And if they can make some money referring you for an operation that you may or may not need, they're going to do it. So let's understand what we're facing in our country. So let me talk about the thing that I want to share with you. You're probably aware that you have a respiratory system that allows you to breathe, a circulatory system that moves the blood through your body, a digestive system which digests the food, a nervous system which sends nerve impulses to your whole body. Most people are aware that you have an immune system that deals with pathogens. Did you know that you have a toxic removal system, a toxin removal system, that it's part of your body, it's built into you, and it's one of the most essential systems you've got? And I wish I had a big audience so I could see everybody's hands. I wonder what percentage of the people listening to me right now knew, A, that they had a toxin removal system, and B, knew that it's absolutely essential for your health and survival. It's as important as your circulatory system or your respiratory system. And I didn't know. I'm not an uneducated person. I'm not an uninformed person. I'm not an I'm an uninterested person. I'm very interested in all these things. I never heard about this. Now, if you think about it, it makes a lot of sense because you walk through the world, even in a pristine natural setting, and, there's smoke from, let's say you're living out in the woods. There's going to be smoke fire, right? You inhale that, goes into your bloodstream. Well, it can't stay in there, right? It's got to get out. So there has to be a mechanism, or it's a system for identifying toxins, binding, creating the chemicals necessary to bind with those toxins, and then flushing the toxins out of the system. How do you flush toxins out of your system? Respiration, exhalation is one. Urine, feces, sweating. We have a bunch of pathways to get rid of this stuff. Now, fast forward to the present. The big challenge, especially in industrialized places in the 19th century and before was the amount of infectious disease, right? People were living in squalor, without proper sanitation, and they were all packed together. So they were getting a lot of infectious diseases. And along comes antibiotics and penicillin and all this great stuff, and most important of all, better sanitation. If you want to know who's improved public health more than any other profession on earth, it's not the doctors, it's the plumbers. Okay, next time you see a plumbing truck go by, or you see your buddy who's a plumber, you're looking at one of the best doctors on the planet, because those are the guys that really reduced the public health catastrophe that was going on in the 19th century and early 20th century. Anyway, we've got that licked. We're doing a really good job at that. We got, so far so good. We've got pretty good infrastructure for that. And if you get off the rails and things get really scary, there are antibiotics that can help you. Okay. What we have not got a handle on, and what is being completely ignored by 99.9% of all doctors and all news media and 99.9% of all science writers, is the fact that we live in the most contaminated, chemically contaminated environment in human history, right? It may not look that way. It's not like being in China with, the air's so thick you can't even see a block. We're not talking about that kind of contamination. We're talking about the hundreds and thousands of chemicals that are in modern life that simply did not exist even 50, 60 years ago. Forget about 100 or 1,000 years ago. Long story short, we had an explosion of synthetic materials, in some ways very positive. Plastic is a very handy thing. Unfortunately, too much plastic, especially in your food containers, and that plastic ends up in you. Did you know that? Did you know that when you drink from a plastic water bottle, you get some plastic in your system? And if you drink from a lot of plastic water bottles, you get a lot of plastic in your system. And if, God help you, if you're microwaving food, you're getting a ton of plastic in your system. Nobody has told you this, have they? It is the number one internal pollutant in America, plastic. So all this hysteria about plastic in the ocean, where it is a huge problem, and nobody's talking about the plastic in you. And that's just one element. We could go on all day and night about all the new things that are in the environment. The air fresheners. God help you if you got an air freshener in your house. Please rip it out of your wall and throw it out. It is pure toxic. The new scented laundry soaps. And some of you know what I mean. If you're unfortunate enough to live next to somebody who is using them and venting their laundry air out into the neighborhood, you can smell that stuff from almost a mile away. Well, that's an exaggeration. 4 blocks, 4 houses away, yes. Sometimes you can smell people wearing that stuff when you walk by them. Okay, neurotoxins. There's nothing natural about that. Designed to bind a particular chemical to the cloth for as long as possible, hopefully forever. And it's going into the skin of the person, into their bloodstream. If you inhale it, it's going through your nose, into your bloodstream. Now, none of this is a problem until you hit overload. Okay, so let's imagine an overload situation. You're home. You've just made yourself something to eat. Instead of washing the dishes, you put them in the sink. Yeah, not the best practice in the world, not the end of the world. Next meal comes, same thing. Pile up some more dishes. Next meal, again and again and again. And finally you get to the point where it's impossible to clean the dishes because you can't even get to the faucet. This is what can happen to people, and does happen to people by the millions. They take in toxins during the day. It might be diesel fumes. It might be air freshener. It might be a brand new carpet. It might be a leaky gas stove. Or it might be 100 things. And 1 exposure, no big deal. 2 exposures, no big deal. Here's the key. If the exposures are greater then your ability to clean them out that day, what happens? It's like the dishes piling up in the sink. Okay, the body can't get rid of it. What does it do? It throws it in the closet. Now, if you have an additional health problem, a very common health problem would be to have fungal overgrowths or parasites or something of that nature in your guts, and that comes from being put on antibiotics and never being post-treated for your antibiotics and restoring your internal flora. It's very important if you're on antibiotics to very carefully and very meticulously restore the havoc, the damage that antibiotics do to your flora, internal flora. Why is that so important? Here's why. Half of your immune system is based in your guts and your intestines. Half. Gets even more scary. Fully half or more of your nervous system, the chemicals, the neurochemicals, the serotonin, all these things you need to feel happy and healthy and clear-headed, all those are produced in your guts. Okay? So if you have some kind of an overgrowth, and it may not have any obvious symptoms, every day you are not getting the substances you need to fight the toxins. And these overgrowths are creating additional toxins. So if you're a person that's got that and has been exposed, might be vocational. You might have worked in a factory. You may not even remember where you were exposed. If you live in the city, you're breathing diesel fumes all day long. If you're in the countryside, you're getting pesticide drift all spring and summer and fall. Right? If you live in the suburbs, how many of your neighbors are getting their lawns sprayed with herbicides? It's drifting to you. So wherever you are, they're finding this stuff in the livers of polar bears up in the Arctic Circle. So there's really no place you can go to get away from it. The good news, and there is good news here, is you're wired to get rid of this stuff. We were born with it. We were designed with a system to deal with it, and if we know how to do it, we can get ahead of the daily onslaught, clear out today's crap, and begin to chip away at some of the stuff that has been stored. Where does it get stored? It gets stored in the fat. It gets stored in the heart. It gets stored in the kidneys. It gets stored anywhere. It's just like a pack rat, just stashes stuff away. So the bottom line is, every day you're exposed to toxins. That's just part of being a human being or being any kind of a being. You need to get rid of them daily. This is not, people talk about detox, and it's like an event. I'm going to go and I'm going to detox. I'm going to be on juices for a couple of days. That's a good start. But we don't live in a world where that's enough. We live in a world where that has to be done every day. It's unfortunately, we've got a lot of benefits to the civilization we live in, but we've got this massive downside, and nobody is telling you about it. And if you don't get a handle on it, it is the precursor to all kinds of disease. And what disease you're going to get is dependent on your genetics. There's a great saying: genetics doesn't really cause disease. Genetics loads the gun. Environment pulls the trigger. Okay? So you can have, and in fact tests have been done, they tested some people 100 years old. Some of them had the worst genetics imaginable, but they grew up in a clean environment. Nobody who was born, certainly after 1950, grew up in a clean environment. Okay? After World War II, every chemical known to man was created and promulgated, and all natural things were replaced with chemical things. For instance, laundry soap. Laundry soap used to be made from natural substances because there was no other option. And then they discovered that they could use chemicals, and they went with the chemicals. And you take that one thing and expand it by 1,000 things. So we're living in a super saturated, toxic environment. It's just a fact, So keeping on top of this stuff and regularly getting it out of your system. So what can you do? There's some simple things you can do. Number one, do you have a Wi-Fi at home? Turn it off when you go to sleep. You don't need to be irradiating your brain with Wi-Fi when you're sleeping. It does affect people. It does reduce the production of melatonin. It does interfere with your sleep. And please, I used to do this. Don't do it. It's a sick habit. Do not take your electronics to bed with you. Just don't do it. It's a bad habit. It's, if we use the old-fashioned word of hygiene, and, make sure there's no cell phones by your bed. Make sure if you have an electric clock, maybe you don't need an electric clock next to your bed, maybe next to your head 8 hours a night. Look for everything electronic that could possibly be impinging on your sleep at night. Why? Sleep is the time you detoxify. So that's how the system works. You run around all day and do all the crazy stuff you do, then you stop, the body stops moving, and the body goes into detox, repair, and rebuilding mode. If your sleep is interfered with, even if you're sleeping, you're not getting the deep sleep that you need. So take care of that. It's a simple thing you can do. Number two, try to get to bed early. And I hate this. I love staying up late. I could easily stay up till 3 or 4 every night. There's so many fascinating things out there in the world. But you know what? Your liver does its best work from 10 to midnight. So, given that your liver is the great detoxifier, give it a break. Let it do its thing. We've got to do this, right? We live in an environment where we have to do this. We have to take these things seriously. And these are all simple things, by the way. Nothing so far costs any money, right? Number three, do not eat late, right? Why? Because instead of detoxing, your body is now digesting. And it's an on-off switch I've discovered. This is really important. If you're digesting food, you're not detoxing. If you're drinking, you're not detoxing. If you're drugging, you're not detoxing, okay? The detox stops and the body deals with the current problem that it's facing, digestion or the acute intoxication. All these habits are things that we know they're not healthy, but in this environment, in this civilization, they're super not healthy. When should you stop eating? The sooner the better. I've heard it said that your last meal should be at 4 p.m. I know that's extreme, but the earlier the better. Give yourself a long fast before you even hit the pillow, and then that long fast overnight. When there's no digestion going on, detox is going on full blast. Okay? So these are some simple things you can do. Make sure you're not being, unduly irradiated while you're sleeping. Get to bed earlier. Don't watch crazy TV shows late at night. Not doing you any good. And 3, do not, eat late at night. Right? So that's free stuff that you can do. Okay? Very important in the detox process, and this sounds really simple, but is the quality of your water. Number 1, stop drinking from plastic bottles. You're ingesting plastic. If you don't believe me, look it up. And this plastic goes to your joints, and it is one of the sources of joint pain. It also gets into the membranes of your cells, and it disrupts the detox process. Things can't get in and out easily. So what do you do instead? Well, you can get bottled water from, I think it's called Mountain Spring. It's the one out in Arkansas. It comes in green bottles, glass bottles. It's not cheap, but it's clean, and it's not in plastic. Or you can do some serious research and find something that cleans the water very well, and drink from water, carefully filtered water from your tap. But the key is you don't want to be drinking from stuff that has been sitting in plastic for days, weeks, or months. You don't know how long some of this stuff's been sitting, and every day more plastic is getting leached out. And when you drink, same thing. And this extends to food. You know, it's hard to eliminate, but you can reduce it greatly. How much food do we buy that's wrapped in plastic, that comes in plastic containers? That includes canned food. All these things are adding toxic load to your system. So to the extent that you can, and I hope you can, eliminate them. Stop putting fuel to the fire. I mentioned earlier air fresheners and scented laundry detergent and all this stuff. It's not doing you any good, and it's adding more toxins to your toxic load. So there's so many things you can go through the day, and it's a game of inches, right? It's not like you do one thing and the problem's solved forever. It's an awareness thing. You look around your house, and I keep discovering things every day. I'm like, holy goodness, what the hell is this stuff doing in my house? You know, how many people have highly toxic chemicals under their kitchen sink? Again, one bottle is not going to make the difference. 10 bottles plus dust, plus mold, plus EMF waves from the Wi-Fi, plus the plastic from your drinking. You know, it's a drag. You know, it'd be nice if we lived in this pristine world and we didn't have to think. You know, we don't live in that world anymore. And I have to say this too. People that think that just the diet is going to get them to where they need to be, that's very important. Fresh food, lots of vegetables, whole grains. You know, if you eat animal protein, don't go crazy with it, but you know, have some. You know, if you eat it, eat it. Some people need it, by the way. All those things are going to help, but it's not enough. In the 21st century, it's not enough. We have to get aware and informed and educated about this toxins problem, and we have to make our homes refuges to the extent that we can. And it's 90% of this stuff is just a matter of not doing stuff. It's not a matter of going out and buying something elaborate or buying something expensive. However, probably a high-quality indoor air filter, high quality. Do your research. There's a company called Needs, NEEDS.com. You can call them up and tell them about what you're trying to achieve, and they can advise you. That can help a lot. Here's a weird and interesting and frightening fact. Indoor air pollution is often 5 to 10 times greater than outdoor air pollution. So you could be living out in the countryside, fresh air, everything's great, but your indoor environment is worse than working in a factory. In fact, some people have indoor environments so bad that if the labor inspector came by and did an air sample in your home, they would close your house. You know, so diet, absolutely essential. You know, if it's in a box, a bag, a can, or a bottle, it is suspect. I mean, do you know, for example, they spray a pesticide-like substance on the inside of cereal boxes? Look it up. Why do they do that? Well, they don't want, you know, weevils and stuff to grow out of their Wheaties, right? By the way, if you think we're being protected by government agencies, I hope you realize that's not happening, and it probably will never happen, right? I think there are good people in government who are trying to do the work they signed on for, but I think the government's completely been overtaken by corporate interests, and if it makes a buck for somebody, it ain't going to stop being done. So it's up to us to be knowledgeable, informed, and just say no. Like boycott garbage food, boycott air fresheners, boycott caustic chemicals. You know, most things can be cleaned with white vinegar or with baking soda. Better than any chemical you could ever buy. It's a lot cheaper for the manufacturers. than it is to provide white vinegar. I mean, the markup is so huge on some of these chemicals. So a lot of this is not a matter of spending more money. It's just a matter of becoming wiser. And to take this back, we were born with a toxin removal system. We are living in an environment, and we'll continue to live in an environment for the rest of our lives, and your children's lives and your grandchildren's lives and everything, where the necessity of being aware of the pervasiveness of everyday toxins is part of our survival. Look, some of us have ancestors, like my ancestors came from Ireland. Well, when they came over, if you didn't pay your rent, the landlord would burn your house down and throw you out in the street. Okay? We're not dealing with that yet, but that's what they had to deal with. Let's say you're from Russia or one of those, like Poland or something. Well, you might have had the Cossacks, come into your town and, cut off everybody's heads and burn everything to the ground, rape the women, sell the children in this. That's what they had to deal with, right? So whoever you are, if you trace your ancestry back far enough, you had ancestors that had to deal with some really tough stuff, all right? Luckily, we're not dealing with anything like that, but we're dealing with our own issue, and that issue is the pervasiveness of toxins. People don't want to look at this. They don't want to think about it. It can be a depressing subject, but if you know that you have a toxin removal system, it's just like your respiratory system, just like your circulatory system. It's in there. It works. What we have to do is, one, not overload it with unnecessary crap. Two, give it a chance to work. Don't eat a huge meal at 10 o'clock, watch TV till 1, fall asleep with your cell phone next to your head, et cetera, right? We don't have to do that. Nobody's making us do that stuff, right? We can eat earlier. We can get to bed earlier. We can power down all the electronics around us so that we get a good night's sleep. So the steps are: don't load the system with crap. Don't interfere with the toxic removal system. And help it with healthy food. So I know a lot of people subscribe to this channel for healthy eating, and it is really important. But in the 21st century, it's only one piece of the puzzle. I want to recommend 3 sources for you, books that I strongly recommend you get that go into this in greater detail. I cannot stress more emphatically that this is the issue of humanity, especially if you live in the United States. Believe it or not, we are more polluted than anyone else. I mean, maybe some people in China living next to the chemical factory are in worse shape, but on statistically overall, for instance, Roundup, which is sprayed on everything, is in all of our food. By the way, one reason to get organic, one of the many reasons to get organic food. We have 6 times the levels of the ingredients of Roundup in our bloodstreams than Europeans. Why? Europeans don't allow this stuff, or they restrict it. In the U.S., unfortunately, if you're a big company, it's anything goes. Okay, so we've got this is our challenge. This is the challenge of human beings living in this time. And here's something important. As bad as it is for us, it's cumulative. So people that started having children in the 60s and the 70s and the 80s and the 90s and the 2000s, not only did they absorb their own toxic load, they pass it along to their children. Why are the cancer rates up radically for kids, and every other disease, diabetes, obesity, mental functioning problems? Why are these things so high? The kids are contaminated, okay? Their toxic removal system has been overloaded. So if you think, well, I'm okay, I don't have to worry about this, well, maybe you have kids, maybe you have grandkids, or maybe you have kids you just care about. Educating yourself about this so that you can change your lifestyle and inform your kids about what they're facing. They need to know. Kids are adaptable. They get it. They want to be healthy. They want to grow up and be able to go out and do things. But here's the thing, nobody's telling anybody this, right? Procter & Gamble, which makes the toxic laundry soap, runs daytime TV. Do you think there's ever going to be a television show during the day that there will ever be a educational information about the toxic overload of the average person? It's never going to happen. And then when we turn on the TV at night, what do we see? Every other ad is for a drug, okay? And all these drugs, by the way, adding to the problem, okay? Drugs are basically taking you have symptoms. Those symptoms are alert signals, warning signals. And what do drugs do? Do they go to the root of the problem? Do they get rid of the toxic problem that precipitated the illness? Do they add nutrition so that the body has what it needs to rebuild itself? No. They take a sledgehammer and smash the alarm system. Okay, so if you've got skin rashes, we can handle that. We'll put this on you. The skin rash is telling you there's something going on inside. So what do? They give you a drug to make the skin rash go away. And that illness is going to come out somewhere else. And take that by every other drug and multiply it by 1,000. And that's what we are facing. So there's a lot of money being made by people that are in the poison business, whether it's big pharma or cosmetics or cleaning products or manufactured food, and they rule the roost. And we have got to educate ourselves. So, and here's the thing, it's doable. Like, we can do this. Yes, to hear about it all at once, it feels insurmountable. And it is not necessarily easy. It's simple once you get it, but working through all these things, and it takes time, right? But this is your life, right? Like, what's more important than that? And if you don't feel that your life is very important, what about your kids' lives or your grandkids' lives or future generations? They're entitled to have a chance to live, right? So we've got to be wise. We've got to be informed. Great if you're eating a good diet, but it ain't enough. Also, you may need supplements. Now, I'm going to give you a recommendation for an expert whose books you can read, and she'll guide you to the right ones. Do not take supermarket supplements. Do not take the supplement of the day, whatever somebody is pushing. Oh, this is the solution to everything. Those people are full of it. Right? They're as bad as anybody. They're as bad as Big Pharma. They're not helping you, and they're just trying to make a buck. However, high-quality supplements prescribed, not necessarily by prescription, but custom to you by someone that knows what they're doing, that is very important. And doctors that say, you get it all from your food, and not anymore. It's just not the case. You're going to need help getting toxins out of your system, and a lot of the food that we eat is deficient. By the way, just so you understand something, to remove toxins from your system consumes nutrients. Right? So minerals like magnesium, like copper, okay? You need those for a lot of functions just to stay alive, okay? You also use those minerals and other chemical substances in your body to engulf and destroy and transport toxins out of your system. So when you're living in a toxic world, which we are, you're burning up a lot more nutrients to deal with the toxins. This is why later, right? First things first, right? Get the crap out of your life. Stop beating up on your toxic removal system, and help it out with clean, fresh, if possible, organic food. Right? The next level, and we'll get to this in another call, is select supplements to help rebuild the toxic removal system. So I'm going to recommend a book, an author for you, and believe me, she'll explain the whole thing to you in more detail than you ever needed, but you'll get it all explained to you. And those are really the steps. So this is doable. This is doable, and it's something that must be done. Okay, so the first book I want to recommend is called Clean. and it's by Alejandro Junger. Alejandro is the Spanish version of Alexander. Alejandro Junger, Junger. And it's just called Clean, the Revolutionary Program to Restore the Body's Natural Ability to Heal Itself. I like this book for a bunch of reasons. Very well written. Number two, Junger was a cardiologist, so he went through the whole medical thing, and he did all the studies and all the internships and all the crap that these guys do, the fellowships and so on. Worked at prestigious hospitals. So he's not a flake. He's not a lightweight. He's not someone that's pulling this stuff from thin air. He knows what the medical system is like, and he mastered it. And he got sick and discovered, wow, I'm on my own. Which doctors experience that too, by the way. Until they get sick, they're all arrogant and they know everything and they really don't care. But when they get sick and they can't be fixed, suddenly they find God and they learn that they've actually got to crack, if they want to live, they've actually got to crack a book and learn something. And this is what happened to him. He had all these illnesses. They were unresolved and seemingly unresolvable. And what he discovered was what I've been talking about in this call. Toxins, toxins, toxins everywhere. And he had more coming in than were going out. And when more comes in than goes out, you accumulate. And the accumulation creates a snowballing effect. And it tears down your nutrients. You overconsume the nutrients in your body, so you become deficient. And when you're deficient, you can't detoxify as well. And the toxins pile. You see how it goes? And then you end up with diabetes, you end up with cancer, you end up with heart disease, you end up with, you name it. It all depends on your genetics, where your vulnerability is. Remember, your genetics are not a death sentence. Genetics loads the gun, environment pulls the trigger. So don't pull the trigger. And remember, they did this test with centenarians, 100-year-old people. Some of these people had the worst genetics imaginable, but the trigger never got pulled, right? Other people do everything right, but they're living in a toxic environment, and the trigger gets pulled, and it hits them in the form of diabetes or cancer or heart disease or multiple chemical sensitivities or anything you can imagine. So anyway, this happened to Junger, and he had to rethink everything. And he did a great job of thinking and a great job of research, and he's made it super crystal clear. Because this is a big topic. I'm trying to cover it in a call, but this is a huge, huge topic, but approachable, dealable. You can handle this. You can do this. This is doable. Okay? And I like his book because it's clear and it's simple and it's down to earth and he explains it all. Next book I really like is by a guy named Walter Crinion. That's Crinion. And the name of the book is Clean, Green, and Lean. And I think his publisher talked him into packaging it as a diet book. And I everyone's got to make a buck, and I understand why that was done, and maybe it will reach people that otherwise might not have been reached by packaging in that way. But this is way more than a lose weight book. This is another profound book, very well researched. This guy's also a doctor. He's a naturopath. He's a naturopath that's willing to take on the tough cases that MDs are afraid of. Right? Look, people want easy lives. They want to go to work, they want to punch the clock, and they want to go home with a pile of cash. Right? And some people take their oaths more seriously. Right? This Dr. Crinion and Dr. Junger are examples of doctors who, either by necessity or by caring or by a combination of both, decided to take their oath more seriously. So Crinion, Crinion, clean, green, and lean. Again, everything that I've explained or talked about in this call, he goes into it in way more depth, but in a way you can follow. And fortunately or unfortunately, however you want to put it, we've all got to become knowledgeable. Right? You're knowledgeable about a lot of stuff. You've learned a lot of stuff. You learned how to speak English. You learned how to walk. You learned how to chew gum. You've learned a lot of things. Okay? Here's some new learning that we all have to do. And again, it beats the heck out of having the Mongols, coming over the horizon, ready to burn and pillage and rape everybody in the village. So as opponents go, we can get a book, we can read, we can learn some things, and we can bit by bit get the toxins out of our life, stop beating up on our toxic removal system, eat things that are promoting of toxic removal. That's a lot better, right? Than having the marauders, coming, right? We're not facing that. So everybody's got to face something. This is what we got to face. So this book is fantastic, clean, green, and mean. Get rid of the toxins that make you fat. Okay, and I will say something. When I cleaned, and I'm nowhere near the end of this. And I realize this is a daily thing for the rest of my life, and I haven't recovered fully from my illness, by the way, after 8 months of rigorous stuff. But I'm getting better all the time. But I will say this, once I started doing these things, the fat, not that I had a lot, but I had some, melted away. I mean, it really did go away. Why? Why are people getting fat? Go back to that. Well, first of all, bad lifestyle, bad diet, blah, blah, blah. But their toxic removal system is plugged up. Their organs are plugged up. So instead of getting junk out, it's like this sink, the kitchen sink. Put in one plate, I'll leave it there. Put in another one, well, it's only 2 plates. 3, next thing you know, the sink's so full you can't clean it out. This is what's happening to a lot of people that are having weight problems. Toxins are going in, the body's going, can't deal with this, we got to put it, but it's got to go somewhere, right? It can't be neutralized. Right? It can't be evaporated. It's in there. It's got to come out, or it's got to go somewhere. The ideal thing is for it to go out. But if it can't go out, where's it going to go? Well, one of the things the body does is create fat, especially when the digestive organs aren't working well. And these toxins are put into fat. In fact, you have to be careful. If you're heavy and you go on a rapid detox, could be rough road. Because suddenly all these toxins are coming out all at once. This is why it's important to read a couple of books and know what you're dealing with. So that's clean, green, and lean. The next resource I want to recommend is Sherry Rogers, Sherry, Rogers, MD. She's written a ton of books. I've lost count. Tired or Toxic? Great book to read. Is Your Cardiologist Killing You? A great book to read. She has a book on environmental illness, EI. Great book to read. Now let me tell you, these books are heavy lifting. And that's why I recommend that you come to them after a little bit of gentle introduction from Crinion and Junger. Learning from Sherry's books is a little bit like getting a drink from a fire hose. It's tough. It's tough sledding. However, once you've got the foundation from these introductory books, then her books are a lot more easier to deal with, and you'll appreciate what she's done, which is she's put everything in her books. She doesn't leave anything out. Lots and lots and lots and lots of detail. And if you've got a serious illness, you need lots and lots of detail, right? Some people are going to be lucky. They're going to do half a dozen things or a dozen things, and they're going to experience a transformation of their health and how they feel. God bless those people. I'm glad for them. Others of us are not necessarily going to be so lucky. We're going to have to become more serious scholars. But anyway, I've laid out a path for you. I've had to read over 100 books, which to me is nothing compared, given the necessity, it had to be done. Listen to countless hundreds of hours of podcasts, and there's a lot of great stuff out there. These are the things that I think are the place to start to get a handle on this. Because whatever your problem is, I will bet dollars to donuts that one of the factors is toxic overload. And you will never get better until you can address that issue. And the good news is we're wired to do it. All we have to do is stop hitting ourselves in the head with a hammer, and we're going to start getting better right away. So Clean by Dr. Alejandro Junger, Clean, Green, and Lean by Dr. Walter Crinion, Crinnion. Almost any book by Sherry Rogers, start with the one she's got books on. Heart disease, she's got books on diabetes, she's got books on pain, she's got books on depression. Start with wherever, she's got books on environmental illness. Start where, you have the most affinity. All her books are available from prestigepublishing.com, prestigepublishing.com. They're very affordable, and they're like, every book is like an encyclopedia. I mean, it's all there. It's intense, I have to say. I mean, she's clear, and so there's no deficiency there, but she tells you everything, which, if you need it, is a blessing. Because to take this full circle, you will not find doctors that know this stuff, who are motivated to learn it, who integrate it into their practice. And I don't think it's an accident. I think the petrochemical, big pharma, it's all one industry, It's all one big interlocking industry with the banks on top, and they all want their interest payments, and they all want their money. And they have captured the medical profession. And the medical profession is really just a bunch of guys that show up, you show up, they run some tests, and they look at their little book, and they say, you need this drug, or you need this operation. And they're done. And they think they've done their jobs. Does that make sense? Nobody looks for cures anymore. Well, there's really no cure for this, but we can manage it, right? That's their answer to everything now. Think about that. There's no money in cures. There's a lot of money in management. There's no money in simple, safe, effective cures, which is why you never hear about them. But there's plenty of money in super expensive, super dangerous, dubious value drugs and procedures. There's a lot of money in that. And unfortunately, that seems to be how things work. And we need to step out of that. And we are blessed that we've got resources. There's nothing, I'll tell you from firsthand experience, there's nothing more terrifying than having your health completely disintegrate and not having a clue as to why it happened. And then going to doctors who you thought you could trust and finding out they could not care less. If you don't have an easy thing that they can just write a prescription for, they don't want to hear about it. This is a problem for many, 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 many people, and it's going to be a problem for many, 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 many more. But we should have faith and confidence. We're blessed that we've got really good resources now. We were born with a mechanism that works. We just have to stop injuring it and let it do its job. I mean, think about this. Always remember this. We're pretty coddled. Hopefully you're listening to this indoors. Hopefully it's not 20 below zero. Hopefully you don't have to go out and catch your dinner tonight. We've got it, on some levels, we've got it really, really easy. But we've got this particular challenge. But if you think about our ancestors, you're probably not your parents, probably not your grandparents, but go back far enough and you have people that were living physically really, challenging, dangerous, difficult, tough lives. And somehow they survived and passed on to the next generation, the next generation, the next generation. We're all descendants of very tough survivors. So that's our endowment, right? The human species would not have survived these thousands and thousands and thousands of years if there weren't mechanisms built into the biology to survive all kinds of crazy stuff. Okay, so we've got it. But those of us living in the 21st century, those mechanisms have been damaged, right? So it's our job to get educated about how they got damaged and to go about undamaging them so the mechanisms can do what they do so that we can live happy, productive lives, and we can help the next generations do the same. So the books again are Clean by Alejandro Junger, Clean, Green, and Lean by Dr. Walter Crinion, and then the Encyclopedia of Healing. All her books, her newsletter, Total Wellness, fantastic, by Dr. Sherry Rogers, and that's available at prestigepublishing.com.